Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to do a little walnut platter. At least that's the plan. So first order of business will be getting it. This is actually the top side because the bottom has a little bit of a pith going through it, so we will need to get rid of that. We'll flatten out the top first. You're gonna have some vibration because this was chainsaw cut. It's not really very overly great. So we'll make it flat. We'll know what we're working with, or what we have to work with. There's a place that's still not quite flat. A little sapwood in it. It's more important for this one here to be flat because that's where the rim will be. So we'll know what we're doing that way. We're going to need to grab it with a tenon in here. I'm thinking I could grab it probably, that's fine. I could grab it with the big 4-inch jaws, but it wouldn't do me a whole lot of greatness to do that. So we'll just get rid of a little bit more material. This will all go away eventually anyhow. Give us a nice place to be able to get a hold of it. Should be that. Sure, I got rid of all that. A very nice surface out there. Should possibly do a little something about that. If I drop the handle down a little bit more, it'll give me a little bit nicer of a surface. That looks much better. It's just kind of a little bit of a optical illusion in some ways. It doesn't really need to be, certainly doesn't need to be fancy out there. Before I get carried away, set our calipers, because we will grab this with a recess. grain direction going up and down. And grab a hold of that. Actually, I guess if we wanted to, we could bring the, oh, it's weak. Could use a little wax in there. Don't really want the point though. So this really probably wouldn't have to bring the live center back up, but this thing is still sort of out of balance. So it's here, might as well use it. Next order of business, we'll flatten out this bottom, we'll make it round, and then we'll work on whatever shape that we're going to do. It's still fairly out of balance. It's, like I say, it's chainsaw cut, so it's not going to be really nice and neat and all that good stuff. That'll all go away. That'll go away. So that's good enough for that. Now we'll make it round. And we should be able to spin it at whatever speed we want to. Still feels like there's a spot. Some bit of worm activity there. I don't necessarily want that in the outside of my platter though. We'll take and reduce that just a little bit more, see if it goes away. If not, then I guess we're just going to live with it. It's all in the sapwood, so it's going to stay there. Now we'll get rid of the live center. I might have to get the bigger longer tool rest. Yeah. Because I want to be able to reach to the center. Something like that. Smidgen on the low side. It has a little bit of a vibration to it, but most of that's probably that sapwood. It's not a bad vibration. Just enough that you know that it's there. So now let's take and figure out about where there's going to be our recess. very shallow. It'll be shallow. It's about 1/8 of an inch at most. And actually now we can, from there, actually finish that in there. I'm just trying to think how big the foot's going to be. So we're still about 11 inches. So I probably need like a 3.5, maybe 4-inch foot. About that. Pardon the reach, of course, but let's look at that.
Hey, your phone is ringing. Pick up your phone.
Now somebody
The
wants to talk to
phone!
me.
Yeah, the phone is ringing.
Hold on. Hello?
Hey, Kirk, it's Brian from Woodcraft. How are you?
All right.
Hey, sorry to bug you. I just wanted to check. Somebody came in interested in the ice cream scoop for tomorrow. Can you do another one in that class yet?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, I know you were prepping and you asked, so before I accepted it, I wanted to make sure you were good with it.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
All right.
That's all I needed. Sorry to bug you.
That's all right.
All
Bye.
right, thanks.
Well, now we have a third person for our ice. I have a class tomorrow at our woodcraft store. I don't think that's quite enough material there for what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking more like that. Because in the platters, they should be fairly big as far as the foot goes. It makes them sit on the table better. So we'll go back and do a little detail work in the center here. Using a shear scraper. Because there's really only one good time to get to the center point, and that's like right now. And of course it's a foot. I shouldn't quite done it that way. Bring the tool rest in nice and close. I'm going to put a bead, use my beading tool and put a bead in there. And that's what we will grab it with. So this wants to be cutting pretty much on center. I think just one will be enough. This is what you call design as you go, as you can tell. I should have not really what we're going to do. Theoretically, I already tapered that, so this should be the bead it sits on, would be the outside one. think they say it's been quite a while since I've done any platters. It's something I do very many of. It's usually because it's a pain in the butt to get them clear. So it's going to give us a little ridge up underneath that bead to grab a hold of. So now we can go back and redo what we already did. That'll look alright, I guess. So now we want this to be an OG shape out here, which we'll need to divide this in thirds. So do the real scientific and say there, there, there. I'll be somewhere in about here. About a 45-degree angle there. And we'll probably, even though I already flattened the top, I'll probably use the of that. So we want this to be a curve. It's like more like a cove. Something like that. And this needs to come down a bit. So that want that bead down. Here's where you have to basically work directly in front of it. I'm standing directly over top so I can see the shape develop. We want it to be sort of a nice OG shape. A little bit more out of there. We can leave this plenty thick at the top. It's not much of an issue. We're still not quite into that corner. I think we got a pretty decent OG shape going. We'll have to clean it up a bit. Right now I'm just more concerned about what the shape looks like. I think that's going to look okay. No real, it's a little disturbed on the grain, so we can come back once I got my shape the way I think I want it. Or do I? Still looks flat. Flat in here. That's looking better. Now, if we're really lucky, we have a nice, simple, double-supported cut. And just follow the shape. Take the time. Give us a nice, smooth shape. And we have to contend with is this little bit right down up against the bead. So now it's nice and cleanly cut. We'll make the sanding job very, very simple. So our our scraper should get in that corner nice and easily. And take that last little bit out of there. And as long as that didn't decide to stand things up, which it did right there. So we'll have to do the shear scraping part of it. Get in there as close as we can. And that should have gotten rid of a little bit of, this is walnut, so it has a tendency to stand some grain up in places. I think that'll do the trick. You probably should have little grooves in there, just so we have something a little bit more decorative down there. And now, unfortunately, now would be the best time just to give it a quick once over sanding wise. Should be able to power sand this. I wouldn't see why I couldn't. It's a smooth enough surface. We're not going back to 120. That's pretty good. because the drill is going the same direction, turning the same direction as this. As you can see, there are 3 times the amount of dust, so it's doing a better job. Just go the whole way through the grid. Sanding in there on the bottom. Forward to that. I don't necessarily stand by hand with it going in reverse. necessarily show up too bad. I mean, because of the darkness of the walnut, but it still shows up. It's standing really just more so in here along this edge. But they just sanded out with sheet sandpaper, and I can actually see the little 600 grit scratches running around. So if I don't get rid of them, that'll show. Also see the whole thing right here. Always look at that a little closer before you go the whole way through the grits. A little bit of picked up grain in there, huh? Really interested in going back and starting over with the sanding. Back in a little bit here. Only one little area, which will be right on the end grain. Just make sure that it's smooth. Very small at least a good solid 1/2 inch thick out here, which will be too much. So now we have to think about how wide do we want our rim of our platter. I think we'll start out, yeah, that didn't work so well. Start out around 2 inches. Somewhere out in there. And we'll go from there. And then I can see the line would be easier. I think it's right about there. So we'll split this in half. To have a nice simple curve. I think that looks more appropriate size. I'm also I'm thinning this down out here, which is where I want it to be. We're still better than 1/4 on the edge. How are you this morning? The afternoon, I guess. Yeah, it's still after. Well, 10 minutes of 6 here, but we got a fairly decent curve. Both ways. I won't mess with that. That rounded edge on the outside of that will get sanded around, not cut around. It's already too thin out there to do anything with. So it's that way. I can't speak for anybody else, but I'm doing all right. It's kind of like the end of my I've been on vacation all week, so I've spent a fair amount of time down here messing about. I think that's going to do. I'm going to send this down to the other level. And that should probably have another little bead there. drill those finger guides through that one. And maybe even a little lead. Just want to make sure it cut it cleanly in there. It sounded funny. It looks like it cut it all right. Do it, I think. At least for now, until I get some more stuff out of the road. As Walnut would always have to do, it's got some places that's going to be uncooperative, of course. See if we can get it to make it worse. Yep. Doesn't like to be sort of scraped up on that edge. Not really an overly round bead, but the rest of it will come off and be round with a little bit of sanding. Know when to quit. Checking. Like I say, I don't do many platters, so I got to pay attention to wall thickness more so than I would a bowl. Also want my short hole gouge. Because I like to be able to drop the handle down more than what I could there. I could be easier to just raise the tool rest. But at this point, I don't need to get to center. I can work well above center. Out here. Feels like I got tons This is why you don't get in any hurry to get rid of a bowl gouge. Just because it's only 6 inches long, it's going to allow me, I really like to sort of undercut that a little bit. That's good. See whether if it'll allow me to shear scrape this a little bit. Save me a little bit of sanding work there. Back to the full size one. Make a cut or two. It almost felt like it was sort of getting a little dull. Walnut is dry. Sharpen that quick like. We can even take you along for that messy issue. And walnut, I should be running a dust collector. I'll be coughing all night probably. Walnut's one of the woods that does not like me. That's also why I didn't want to make that curve. There's too much of a heel on it. Now we're good. Now we're down to about 1/8 of an inch of bevel. So now it'll let me make a tighter curve and leave no compression lines behind it. We'll come back here to where we're at. Where were we at? To there, yeah. Do have to remember though, there is a recess that's fairly deep in there. Wouldn't be the first time going through something like that. Drop our tool rest back down. And we're eventually going to need to get to center. Just to go in and get rid of them. It's kind of scary. That almost sounds like that's sort of, okay, there we go. Solid 1/2 inch thick out in there. So definitely a little on the thinner side down there. A lot of people like to use recesses for bowls. I'm not one of them. I don't ever use recess for a bowl. Don't necessarily have quite the curve that I want though. We got material out there. I just won't remove anything off that very bottom, because it definitely sounds like dead center is thinner. How much thinner is another question, but we don't need to find out. Never used to be a fan of a scraper until I started watching Richard Raffin doing some of the stuff that he does with a scraper. I'll tell you what, once you take the time to learn how to use it, so I got the radius that I need there. Get rid of that last little bit. That's it. And they're certainly cheap enough to make. And that's just a piece of Amazon steel, high-speed steel. It takes more time to grind a tang on them than it does anything else, but for a scraper it seems to does all right as far as holding an edge, I think. I just made a couple. I just got some more because the class that I'm doing at Woodcraft tomorrow is the first class in ice cream scoops, so they don't have very good or very big parting tools. They actually have these really little Sorby ones. So I made a couple parting tools. Now the same stuff. This is my own. This is the one I use for cutting tendons and stuff like that. And it doesn't need a big handle. The ones I made for the class are straight, so that they even made them these are ash, and you got to be a little bit lazy on some of this stuff, so I just turned the shape, sanded it to like 220 or 320, something like that, just to make sure that it was all the curves and stuff low. Took it outside, took a torch to it. That's where the black comes in. Seal it, grain fill it, coat of rattle can lacquer over the top of that, and you got a parting tool for, trying to think what it was, about $7 or $8. No, let's put it simple, less than $10. You got a nice simple parting tool I can take and use. People in the class, chances are they're going to drop something or something like that. So if it does, it does. And I'll use it even here, but I don't need two of them. But I made two because it comes in two. I also got two pieces that are bigger and thicker than that too. The whole bill from Amazon was like $25 or $26, something like that. I mean, it's quite reasonable, especially if you want to play around with the scrapers and things like that. I mean, that was the same deal. Now the dust collector is running. It has a tendency to mess with the noise canceling. Move my mic up a little bit. Is that better? I did there. Just go back and hit them. Not being very friendly. Just digging the edge in a little bit. Undercut that a little bit. And that pad there is just a little bit too rigid. I have to switch pads. Go to the softer pad. Go to something a little bit more, a little softer. Okay, it's just a little bit too rigid when you get up into something like that. So we'll go to a much softer. Should go up into that curve a little better. I don't like the hand sand too much. should have stopped a little sooner. I see some what appears to be more like cheat and get rid of them. the 400. Around the back a little bit. Sort of a simple walnut platter. No time like the present, we'll just up and finish it. I will start on the back though. Just kind of how I do things. Just makes it more challenging to get back onto that little itty bitty recess, but we will deal with that. And I don't really, I don't really have a jam chuck friction block for in that one, that bigger jaws. And the face shield off so I don't poke everybody in the face. And go to that. Really need to make another one of these for the bigger chuck, but I don't use the bigger jaws for that terribly much stuff. I don't need all them paper towels in there either. I'll use that. Live center with a piece of, let's see when I pull it up here, hopefully things are far enough back, should be. I just put it up there, and it doesn't really matter if it's perfectly centered, because I'm not going to spin it by under power, I'm just going to spin it by hand. Do need enough drive to be able to spin it. And looks like I used all my gloves yesterday, so let me grab another pair of Nurgle gloves and we'll put some finish on this and call it a day. Couple paper towels. I'm going to finish this with my typical Parfix 3408. If you've never heard of it, it's a slow setting CA glue. And we will get this project done in one coat. Let it sit for 24 hours and then we'll buff it to a nice high luster shine. That's what it is. It's just a simple 3408. If you partake in any of the Wednesday night group, you'll know that a lot of people talk about it. Very simple to use. I have a piece of polyester felt in there. Has a little bit of a reservoir. I'm not too worried about, I'm not going to try and get down in under those two beads because I still need to sign this piece. And then I'll do that once I do that part of it. And do that little bit by hand. And I also want to be able to grab it back into recess to do the inside. And it's still pulling some of the dirt out of it. The little wormy holes that's left there. It'll soak right into them and make them stiff as a board. But with having a 40-second time delay, it's going to give me the chance to do this thing the whole way around twice, at least, and make sure that I have everything saturated. And then once I'm happy with the saturation, I'll wipe off the bottle. I try and keep the bottle clean. And then we will wipe off the excess. because I only want what's soaked into the wood. I don't want any of the excess laying on top. You can see it's still pulling off some of the dirt. Walnut is one of them sort of notorious ones for leaving dust in the grain. And I'll spin it around and look in different directions to make sure that I have everything the way I wanted. How are you doing this evening, Random? Bigger reason to put the lid back on the cap is because now I'm going to spray some accelerator. This I'm going to hit it like 3 places, maybe 4 places. Spraying about 12 to 18 inches away. I just want a little bit of the mist to land on there. Gloved hands, I can touch it. It's not a big deal. Not too bad. Pretty busy. Busy doing stuff that I normally don't do. One of which we got involved in teaching some classes at my local woodcraft store. So it's kind of like a once a month. Ouch, ouch, ouch. That's the elbow. Once a month class, and it's all I do it an all day class. Well, I do 2 classes. Do one in the morning and one in the afternoon. It is an adventure, though. I will tell you that it's very interesting. Yeah, my favorite question to the people when they show up is, of course, the simplest question of, why'd you take this class? And the better one is, how much turning experience do you have? Most of them are like, 0. That's why we came here. I'm like, then why did you want to start out turning a bowl? Well, because I wanted to turn a bowl. I'm like, that's probably one of the harder things to learn how to turn. I said, you really need to learn to turn spindles and that kind of stuff first, but that's not what everybody thinks. Although I did do a spindle turning class several weeks ago, and it was full too. But so the outside's done. We go to the inside, same process, same material, 3408. Inside will take less material than the outside did, because now the pores are already closed on the outside. So it won't soak as much. Try and soak it the whole way through. That's why there was a piece of wax paper also on when I did the inside. That was a valuable lesson learned very early on using this stuff, especially on something that could possibly have enough open grain to run straight through, which it did. And it stuck that pad, a piece of nice bright blue pad, sucked it right down into the grain. Before when I pulled it off, I had already activated it, so it already set up and sucked that blue right down into the piece of, and that was a piece of walnut too. Sucked it right down in there. That's a piece that I tried to fix, inevitably went into the firewood bin. Lesson learned. The wax paper is a good barrier though. It will not go through that, so that's why you'll see me use that on the inside all the time. One and done. This particular one will not allow you to go back and put a second coat. If it can't absorb into the wood, it will sit on the surface and beat up like a well-waxed car. And then you'll have to sand all that off, which is not much fun. because it is plastic. Super glue is nothing more than liquid plastic. So if you've ever done anything with any of the resins, you'll know very quickly that it does not sand very well. It just gums up sandpaper. And we're still pulling dirt off, but we're getting the excess off, which is what we need to do. This wants to be basically dry to the touch. That's it. And quite a few people ask, well, why do you use super glue? I'm like, well, how about if I'm done in one go around? Activate it just for good measure. Take it out just in case, because we know it was thin in there. Get rid of our chuck. Looks like I don't have a... That's one of the things that... Go overhead. And you'll be able to see better. You can see, maybe... You probably, well, yeah, you can. You can see there's definite rings, reflective rings in there. That's telling me right there, and I couldn't do much with it because I was getting thin in the middle because of screwing around with as much of a recess as what I put in there. Let's see just how seriously thin it is. It sounds like it's very thin. It is. Right dead center, 1/8 of an inch. I knew by the sound of it when I was cutting it that it sounded like it was getting thin. So I couldn't project my curve straight down across like I would have liked to. But it's the inside done, the back's done. Have to sign my name on there, and then I'll do the same thing. I'll put the 3408 over top of that, and then we will buff that some other day. It probably won't be this during the week. So I now have my 9-month-old granddaughter living here. They're away today, so I was allowed to make noise at this hour, but I no longer can make any kind of noise after about 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the evening. So when you don't get home from work till about that time, there is no coming down here, and I could come down here any other time. I could have come down here and buffed something like that, or did a little bit of something, before I called it a day. But it's all good. So that's our walnut platter. It's about, I think it was around 11 inches in diameter. Yeah, it's still about 11 inches. Sort of a nice size to do. I don't do very many of them. For one, they don't, it looks like a collection plate for a church to me, but there it is. That is going to be it for us this evening, because we still have to pack up our tools for tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks. If you could hit the subscribe button, that'd be wonderful. Otherwise, have a good week. We're going to try and do this more so on Friday afternoons. I used to do them Saturday evening, but once again, can't be on there late, so I think we're going to switch and try and do it Friday afternoons, time permitting. Until next time, have a good evening.